So this year, I had the privilege of sitting down with the editor of Dune Part 2, Joe Walker. And he gave this mind-blowing breakdown on how he edited the sandworm sequence.
And also the choice of where to put music, as far as there is not a single note of music. We chose a certain moment to kind of flip from sound effects to pure hands. One of the very strongest things that you can do editorially is kind of wipe the sync out.
That's just one of the many amazing conversations I get to have with the world's best editors about filmmaking, storytelling, and most obviously editing. And I want to use this video to share the 5 best conversations I've had with these editors this year. Wes Anderson's editor tells me how they perfected Wes's iconic polyrhythmic timing. The editor of Civil War showed me how they made an ironic needle drop deeply impactful. This one was interesting. Yorgos Lanthimos' editor argued to why not cutting is the best thing for an editor. The editors of Beef explained to me why constant tension is actually bad for your story and how to fix it. And then my favorite, David Finch's editor, explaining why you should hide blinks to create intention. This is the Editing Podcast brought to you by LTX Studio. You find out more about them later. I think you're gonna love all of these conversations. Enjoy. Wes Anderson's style is, like, I think one of the most talked about styles in cinema today. But I think there's many elements that I don't think people particularly understand because it is quite hard to explain. What is the timing of a Wes Anderson film?
It's to the metronome that only he hears is the ultimate truth to that.
This was on an older roll I forgot to develop in the glove box. Self-portrait with shrapnel.
Do page 45.
You did that timing
crazy.
perfectly.
You just said it perfectly.
That was perfect.
Insane.
Like, you know this instinctually then, but like for you, when you're in the editing, how did you make that timing work?
I don't know. I mean, he has to think something's wrong. We have to take it in like he's doing. There's pills on the floor. There's a beautiful bottle of perfume there. She's wonderfully made up. It takes you a while to take in what you're seeing. We're upping the stakes there to have that big pause before Scarlett responds.
Self-portrait with shrapnel.
Do page 45.
There was just intrigue to doing it that way. When we first watched it, we put it together with the sensibility of how we've normally put his stuff together, which is it's coming at you at a million miles an hour and keep up because we're not stopping.
What have you done? How could you?
It says shouting and crying. So shout and cry.
How could you?
We had to really have a word with ourselves and go, no, don't be afraid of just silence.
How could you?
How couldn't I?
We often erred on the side of putting a little bit of air in there, sometimes quite a lot.
And then it says I smash everything off the shelf.
So smash everything off the shelf.
I mean, we're obviously upping the speed of it, so to have that pause, we cut to him, and it has a little snickety-clack rhythm to it, which is Wes Anderson's humor.
It reminds me of what, personally for me, one of my favorite Wes Anderson cuts is in The Isle of Dogs.
Wait a second. Before we attack each other and tear ourselves to shreds like a pack of maniacs, let's just open the sack first and see what's actually in it. It might not even be worth the trouble.
Hi.
A rancid apple core, 2 worm-eaten banana peels, a moldy rice cake, a dried-up pickle, tin of sardine bones, a pile of broken eggshells, an old smushed-up rotten gizzard with maggots all over it.
Okay, it's worth it.
This kind of felt like that comedic cut here where, like, it kind of comes in a bit too fast here. Like,
An old smushed-up rotten gizzard with maggots all over it.
Okay, it's worth it.
And then it says I smash everything off the shelf.
So smash everything off the shelf.
this, which straight into it. I just like those types of differences.
Ultimately, I'll keep saying it. It's not until Wes is happy with the scene that we know the timing's right. You know, when he's happy with the metronome that's in his head, then we're done. It may only be 3 frames that way and 2 that way, but until it's been through his filter, I can only get it close. Wes is able, in a superhuman way, to realize when things are off by even a frame. You know, even a mistake. You know, sometimes, I don't know if editors make the same mistake as me sometimes, where your in and your out point actually can grab a frame that it shouldn't, depending on where you park. I put one of them back in and missed the last frame of the sequence in there. And he noticed.
He notices.
It's not like every mistake like that gets pulled up on, but that's the kind of standard of timing that we have to work with on a Wes Anderson movie.
What do you little princesses want to drink?
Oh, we're not princesses. I'm a vampire. I'm a mum in Egypt who got buried alive and came back alive with his head chopped off. I'm a fairy.
Whenever they have dialogue, they are dealt with completely separately. And often, most times, they weren't even on set together when that was done. There was just one of them and just Wes. There's quite a few shots, they weren't separated, where Augie is telling them that their mums died.
You're saying her mother died 3 weeks ago?
Yes.
When is he coming back?
She's not coming back.
And the over-the-shoulder shot, or the coverage shot of Woodrow and his 3 sisters, everything about them is split and comped. You now have to cut around the curly hair there, because in the take where we wanted this beautiful bit from the sister in the middle, the sister on the right is complaining to the mom and actually talking over it and looking offset. So we've got to slice that bit of the image off. It was incredibly mosaic-like.
You're saying her mother died 3 weeks ago?
Yes.
Is she in there?
Yeah. She's in the Tupperware. Cremated.
In that scene, you cut to a wide, and then a dog just passes in the background.
Yeah, he's separate too. We really edit shots before we edit the movie.
When there is wide shots and there's like, all of these people are very well timed in camera.
It's all done in camera because they're all from takes that we've done that day. It's not like we'll go back the next day and go, right, let's get this dog 10 times. We did everything in one morning. The dog was on set with a wrangler. It was always supposed to be running around the place, or the cleaner switching the Hoover, or, you know, all of these crazy distractions that are not helping him be emotional in that moment. They were all done on the day. Every corner of every frame and every action and every prop is ripe to get changed. The dog, I can picture the mat shape I had to put on the dog already. Nobody, unless you see it, would realize just how much work goes into this. I mean, it's bonkers.
Hello, I'm back. The main intent for this show is for me to learn how I can be a better filmmaker. And the hack is to talk to those filmmakers to learn how to do that. But I've realized I am in a place where I do need to start applying the knowledge that I have been gathering. So it is time for me to maybe make a short film or something. But it's the prep, the pre-production, and I'm a terrible storyboarder. I can't draw. Like, do I need to start a pre-production podcast? I know this is work that has to be done. I actually want to make sure that I can do it in an efficient and interesting way. LTX Studio is the storyboarding AI platform that makes all of this possible. So if I'm thinking of doing a low-budget, lo-fi sci-fi movie, I can even add a still from a movie I love using the style reference feature. Okay, admittedly, when I did that, it was a little bit too bright, and I can play by finding that style that works with the light modeler and also changing the weather. I'm able to sort of ideate the shots and style that I want right here. So I can change the aspect ratio, name my character, and what his vibe is, and then use that to start generating entirely new scenes. I'm storyboarding, I'm creating my story, I'm doing pre-production. For someone who's genuinely terrible at pre-production, this genuinely might be useful. So I would encourage you to give LTX Studio a try as well. So click the link in the description, give it a go, and start your free trial today. How were you able to make that through editing feel realistic?
Sonically, which was always, they were shooting real blanks on set. They creating essentially an actual gunshot sound. It was one of the things that sort of obsessed Alex, was exactly recreating the echo of the gun. Because in that very concrete environment of that set, there was this funny slap echo that was the gunshots were creating for the actors. It was quite traumatizing. I mean, like being next to those guns with the bullets going off. So without that, if they were all just firing silent guns and not, it would have had a huge impact on just the tone of the feel of the film.
That is so cool. Talk about the sound with that too, because it seemed like a distinct choice to take the picture, have the shutter sound, and then silence.
It was quite nice to sort of break up the cacophony of all those gunshots, because it just freezes time for a minute and pay attention to the image more, I think.
It's quite a jarring cut to do it, but yet it still needs to feel smooth. How are you trying to maybe set up for those photographs to come in and it to not be throwing me off?
Sort of trial and error. Sometimes you put it on the downbeat of you can have a barrage of, if you have like 4 gunshots in a row, you put it where the 5th one would be. That can be one of the ways, but I don't know. It wasn't a hard and fast rule. There's just a place that feels right. Oh, someone says a line, and then it's like, how many frames do you drop it like hard on the cut, or it'll do to do the speed of how the person was talking beforehand, or the speed of the track that you're coming into, but it's just like a gut feeling. And then in that sequence was one of the ones where a lot of the times where we used still frames throughout the film were planned and intentional. So we had to sort of create those stills that they shot. It didn't just essentially repurposing footage for the film, because a lot of the times they were shot especially. And in later sequences or early sequences, Kaylee actually had film in her camera. Some of the stills are actually the actors' stills. We went through all the stills that they actually shot, and if they were usable, we used them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
They got their actual pictures in the movie.
The shutter sound on Kirsten's stills is the shutter sound from her camera, but also it's different to the shutter sound on... They're sort of, in a very subtle way, they have sort of distinct voices. Yeah.
And then there was kind of an abrupt cut out of that scene. Right. And then there was a whole build-up of just what felt like 5 minutes of them going up the stairs.
I mean, I always like quite assertive cuts. It's just trying to constantly keep mixing it up so that you don't sort of fall into a pattern of going, yeah, I know what, I get this. This is, okay, now we're in this zone. And so you go from the very, very quiet scene the night before.
I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
They're contemplating the gunfire to the very hard cut into the kinetic gunfire, and you get a barrage with that for 90 seconds. And then you into this silent, quite mysterious climb up the stairs. That sequence we were talking about culminates with definitely the most counterintuitive and arresting needle drop in the film, which is the De La Soul track. We tried so many different things there, and then we both absolutely loved that track, and I don't know what prompted us to think of trying it in the first place, but I mean, we didn't think for a minute it would work, and it sort of doesn't work is sort of the point. I mean, it's completely wrong in so many ways, but then weirdly we were both outside of it and like, this sort of almost worked, and yet it's a really fun track, and you can't, it's the sort of track you want to dance to, take your foot, and therefore that's sort of challenging you to sort of enjoy the music and yet be horrified by the images. It keeps you, I think as an audience, I assume it keeps you on edge. I mean, I've never had the experience of watching the film not knowing what's coming next.
Let me tell you, it does.
The reason why that music cue was so interesting to me is because we look at some other classic war movies, let's say Apocalypse Now, one of the most iconic soundtracks when the helicopters are flying in. But of course that makes war look cool. Whereas I think this movie was also kind of making us look at war a bit more of an objective view of like, hey, actually, this is a pretty awful thing. Music cue of that with those people being executed, it was like the movie was kind of like, how dare this movie make me feel this way? That music cue also gave a really good story for Haley, for her kind of standing up and like kind of entering this world and in her way kind of enjoying it. Like she kind of felt very comfortable. This was cool for her.
She had her first real taste of the narcotic of the adrenaline, right? Which is clearly what Joel's character is, whereas Kirsten's character sort of has a different association with the addiction, but there's no less, the whole note section of that song and the lyric is literally something along the lines of, you've got my body, now you want my soul. That's one of those lyrical correlations that I was saying we didn't really sort of initially, that wasn't why we selected it, but once you kind of go, you go, oh, look, that hits there. And that's sort of what the dance between those two characters is Lee trying to tell the younger person not to follow my footsteps.
There is no version of this that isn't a mistake. I know, because I'm it.
But at the same time, sort of being seduced by the young character and sort of being that you can't help but wanting to draw her in, actually respect her and actually think she's got talent. On the one hand, she's trying to present a cautionary tale. On the other hand, she's sort of becoming a mentor.
That's interesting, yeah.
That was the sort of tension in that relationship and that moment. Absolutely, yeah, is sort of played out visually there to some extent and somewhat helped by that track.
This is the part where we're having a really serious interview and I do this really kind of comedic segue into a cool product. So here's the story to why I'm mentioning this one. Outside of this show, I'm actually working on a documentary, like a pretty big one, but obviously I can't say who it is for yet. But I can say that the names rhyme with Spam and Moldy, and they kind of follow this Blair Witch Project vibe, and so I need to kind of match that vibe. As in, I need to get good music cues to match that vibe. Yeah, you see where I'm going with that. Look, searching for tracks is like one of the most frustrating parts. And this is actually one of the few AI features that I can get behind, where you can use AI to help you find the track that you want. So I'm going to use Audio's Link Match AI to do that. Audio is a music licensing site that has a great catalog of artists and composers that you can use in your content. So I like the soundtrack from this movie, The Witch. I can't play it because of copyright, but I can copy that link, put this into Link Match AI, and it uses its catalog to give me tracks that sound similar. Ooh, that's tense. That works. That works. That would have taken me like an hour to do at least. And of course, you know me, I love to really play around with the timing of the music. So I can download all of the stems. Try Audio today with the link in the description and use our code EDIT70 for 70% off your first year of their pro subscription. So that's $59 for the entire year of using all of their catalog and their AI search tools. Thanks for letting me tell you guys about this. Let's get back to the conversation.
Hi.
Oh, hi, my darling.
So for you, why is it so important to be holding on to this shot?
It's definitely an iconic shot, right? It's the shot where something ordinary happens. The frame is perfect. The bride situation in her kitchen and he being dark and entering from the right. He presents a threat, right? You don't need to intercut these shots for the dialogue and see him saying,
hi.
He has to be a threat.
Oh, hi, my darling. I just went to the store. I got some wonderful tomatoes and some beef tenderloin. I ran into Tammy and Kate. Tammy said they're really missing you at work.
I'm hungry.
So you did have other options, but you chose that this is the one to hold on to the most.
The code has to be very clear. It's the non-edit situation and let the code of the scene be transmitted. You don't need to cut.
Well, it's a classic less is more. The editor, Jake Roberts, who edited Civil War and the next Alien movie, he feels like some editors are paid by the cut.
I very much agree on that, yes. Because if you cut a lot, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't contain the code of the shot as the director imagines for you to edit in a proper manner without destroying the situation somehow.
And then also just like him coming in to that framing, what is quite an ordinary shot, suddenly turning into something quite horrific quite quickly. So much story is told just with that one shot and you simply not cutting, letting the shot speak for itself.
I'm hungry.
And then the music informs, okay, what is going to eat now?
With the beef fillet I just bought, or some spaghetti, or some salmon in the freezer. Is it fish or meat you want?
Meat.
So you see here as well, the rhythm is...
Is it fish or meat you want?
Clap, shut in the door.
Meat.
Wonderful.
Down.
Oh, wait.
Sweetheart? I want you to chop one of your fingers off, cook it with cauliflower, and bring it to me to eat. Or your thumb, maybe, whatever you think is best. That's what I want. Can you do that for me?
Just a small movement of him going forward before we cut to this situation. So the edit is very simple. This shot, his medium shot, and then her medium shot. Just 3 shots.
But it's simple and clean. It's effective.
That's what I want. Can you do that for me?
The music informs that, okay, this is the end of this scene. She heard that. Now we go into her situation. What will she do about it?
So using time of the music to also help you make those cuts. But it is such big skips in time.
I believe we had to be ahead of the viewer at these moments. That's why we made the cuts a bit fast. Take by surprise the audience and not build a lot on that decision and go faster to the making of the choice and cutting her finger.
I still had to wince away for this.
Yeah, because it does create a moment of tension here. And then on this edit, we spent a lot of time. And actually, that was when Emily came to Athens to watch the cut. She suggested that we stay longer because we had a ninja cut between her face, cut on her finger, again her face, and the end of the finger. But then she suggested to use a close-up to say the whole thing and, you know, maybe present the cut later. As a matter of fact, she was absolutely right. When we did this cut, we were both amazed because you see that happening or you imagine it happening on her face.
But yeah, staying on is so much more impactful.
And then when you don't expect it, actually, it comes like, you know.
I don't even want to pause on it. I can't. I can't look at it. I'm getting squirmish just looking at this, even just thinking about it.
I was at a screening in Athens a week ago. One person collapsed and he had to open the lights. It's true, after the finger. He was very upset and he just lost consciousness, and it meant that the situation worked a lot on a visceral level.
Well, I feel bad because it means that the scene worked, that you made someone faint.
Right. It does.
I feel bad for laughing at that though.
Then, of course, the music continues, same rhythm, but different chords, more aggressive and more grave, making the idea come more to our mind somehow. Okay, she did it, and what is going to happen next? But then it continues. Because she cooks a finger.
For me, I pretty much never binge shows, but I watched the first episode, was hooked, binged the entire thing immediately. And that is extremely rare for me. That's like never happened. And so why do you think that was? Why was it so binge worthy?
think it was designed that way. I think we had that in mind where we wanted to have the bingeability factor. And I think it being a Netflix show, there's a little bit of, we would make jokes about the algorithm and making sure that people are going to hit next. We'd move some things around just to make sure, again, like, so that we were hitting the quote unquote, the algorithm, making sure that it was very leaving on a cliffhanger. I think by the time you get through episode 1.
Hey, thanks again for everything. We should exchange numbers and keep
I'm
in
late for an
touch.
appointment right now, so I gotta go. Bye.
The way that the show was edited was part of the process of making sure that hit the audience with something that maybe they weren't expecting, even if they're like, oh, I know this is going to happen. You just peed all over the floor.
What the fuck?
When they're laughing and they're smiling and running away. You're kind of hooked, and so you want to see what happens next.
But at that final frame, she smiles. And that made me go, oh, come on. All right, and I have to immediately hit next.
We also tried to make sure that we were blasting off into the next episode. From episode 1 to episode 2, she burst through the door.
Shit! Bitch-ass handyman pissing on my fucking hardwood floor!
So it kind of ran through together very well. So the energy is always kind of at the beginning and the end. We were very cognizant of making sure that people were going to be wanting to continue from one episode to the next.
There's another one where at the end of episode 5, you've got the guys breaking into the house, and then Fumi ends up falling down the stairs.
Such a lonely day, and it's my guess
If you go to the next episode to kind of getting taken to the hospital, right?
Fumi, we're here for you.
Thank you, Amy.
At the end of episode 8, you've got Danny, unintentionally kidnapping June. It's kind of spiraling out of control in these ways and affecting other people outside of the orbit of the main characters.
Danny took her. I can't find her.
Wait, what?
He came in and knocked me out, and when I woke up, she was gone.
It's kind of, that's a trope, but it's true. We want people to continue to watch. And how do we hook the audience and get that bingeability that kind of goes hand in hand with Netflix shows, I think. And so, yeah, I guess it worked because, we get people hooked on it. But yeah, we definitely we're catering to that for sure.
There's also an interesting structure too, towards the later half of the season, where things kind of reset to a new normal, right? And you think maybe everything's okay.
Amazing grace.
Could easily just be ramping up more and more and more and more the whole time. But I think the fact that there is this plateau and towards the end, I guess, made for an interesting kind of rug pull situation. And then the shit hits the fan and it just ratchets up to a whole other level, which I thought structurally was a really interesting choice.
That moment kind of made me feel like it was a season 2.
Right.
I did get a really interesting emotional reset because I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges with bingeable shows where if it's kind of the same emotion or same tension rising for this many episodes, that gets exhausting and ultimately probably unsatisfying. So the fact that you did just skip 8 months ahead kind of re-engaged me to want to keep on watching.
So I'm super curious about, because you talked about Nat, there was a few, you followed the script pretty closely, but then there's a few editing decisions you had to make to really hone it in and get it to that final point. What decisions either at the beginning or at the end of episodes did you have to make editorially to make it work?
The one that I could speak to was episode 3 when Danny is playing the Incubus cover. That used to be just before it was just, it was just one scene happened and then the next one happened and then the next one happened. George, he's doing his thing in the bathroom, the X-rated thing, to Mia's photo. Amy and Paul have their kiss. It was very structurally this happens, this happens, this happens. And it was very linear in that sense. We showed the episode to Netflix and they were like, oh, well, we want a little bit more of a punch out of the episode. So what we decided to do was turn it into a little bit of a montage where Danny starts playing. You don't even hear that it's him, and then you're seeing all these moments happen over montage, over the music, kind of tied everything together, but it also gave it a little bit more of a you're watching it from above rather than being in the moment. So I thought that was really cool. And then, yeah, we also tried a couple, we had to do a couple of tricks editorially, the kiss was very short. That kiss was like a peck. It was real short. If you watch the episode again, what you'll see is he goes in and kisses her, and we cut. And then we go into George and everybody, and then we come back, and then their kiss releases. We use that whole moment of their kiss to show George, to show the other characters having their moments while this is also happening to Amy. And that was definitely manufactured in the cutting room. And again, I think it just really works well, like showing the action happening while the music's doing it. And then you come at the end and you see, oh, it's Danny singing.
Lately, I'm beginning to find that
that was something that happened editorially where then it was on the page.
That reveal when Danny is singing is like so satisfying. It's so like, okay, Danny, I see you. In talking about The Killer, I think we should probably suggest blinking more than Michael Fassbender did in The Killer. Did he really only blink once in the entire movie?
One of the many.
No, there's blinks in there. We're conscious of blinks not to turn up in the wrong places. I don't think there was an effort to remove them through the film. It's just the nature of how his performance was. But there's been an effort to remove them in previous films when they're all kind of landing off rhythm. And it's mostly about when you get into the meat, like the point of a scene and you're in close-ups and you want something delivered with intention and purpose. Someone blinking all the way through it tends to dilute what they're saying.
I'm not the Zodiac. And if I was, I certainly wouldn't tell you.
If the blinking doesn't happen in a rhythm of the words and it's sort of separated from what's being communicated, it starts to sort of turn into Donald Trump's hands, where it doesn't have a rhythm of what's being said. That's the main thing we're looking for, is for everything to feel like it has intention.
Is there a moment in The Killer that was really important for you to make that work?
When he sits down opposite Tilda.
Wait.
She's, doing all the verbal wrestling to try to get her way out of this situation.
For what it's worth, I would never have involved your female friend.
And Fassbender is stonewalling her. You don't want to blink through that.
I objected to his methods and I told him so.
So on Tilda's side, when she's scrambling, blinks are fine.
You're here because you couldn't help yourself.
So much of it he locks off, so we've got the ability to control the frame and take out what we don't want in the background. And it's this sort of reduction so that all that's left is what's intentional. And anything unintentional tends to stand up.
It's something that we discussed with the Star Wars Andor editor about a year ago. He's also very conscious of blinking, and he would sometimes cover up someone blinking, and so they are kind of staring throughout the whole scene. Are you potentially going to that, maybe that deep level of covering up when someone blinks?
We digitally remove them in Dragon Tattoo in a couple of spots with Rooney. When I'm in sort of coverage and I'm sort of, selecting listening shots, things like that, then I can just, choose the ones. I'm naturally going to be gravitated towards the ones where it's not there. But if it's a performance where it's also dialogue that I'm looking at, the best delivery is going to win the day, whether there's blinks or not.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Then you'll move to digitally removing them. But that wasn't the case in The Killer. We never went that far.
I want to think about what has been attributed to the editing style that you have developed with David Fincher. I think people have said that the exact preciseness, as you've said, and intention, I've always felt like there's this hypnotic feel. How would you describe the editing language of David Fincher and for you?
What David does for sure, always, is provide a lot of coverage. That gets misinterpreted as a lot of takes. What he's extremely good at is making sure that I've got the pieces to be able to move around as needed, or to keep something exciting, or to allow yourself effortlessly be editing pretty aggressively so that you can use just the best pieces of everything. David knows these rhythms. He shoots for an editor. So if it's a really long scene, I'll find in the wide shot that there'll often be blocking, if somebody's coming into the room. So you've got a camera moving to set it up. You sort of work your way in as everybody's in a stationary position. In choreography, I can kind of work my way into closer coverage. Someone stands and moves. Now I want to be out of close-ups because there's too much movement in them. I don't want cameras tracking with people in a close-up size. So I'm now going to bring myself out wide and then slowly work my way to that close-up.
I'm curious. I break into your home in the middle of the night with a silenced pistol.
And you have no idea why I might be here?
And so that close-up tends to be saved for something important, and you don't want someone doing this all the way through it and messing up the dance. Because he's filming from start to finish in a scene, you can be in the close-up at any point that you want, anywhere, but I'll try my hardest not to use it until it is the main sentence in the scene. So you work your way into it. He loves to shoot over shoulders, and they're a lot harder to get because you've got to get, your foreground working as well. It's just, if you're in a single, it's just much easier, I think, for a director or an actor to perfect it because you're isolating how much is out of your control. You're isolating the amount of humans. But over shoulders, they're just a bit more wriggly and they take longer to get on the set. He loves them and I love using them. It means you can sit in shots longer because you can kind of enjoy the foreground talking and you get a sense of the other person.
You're gonna go through life thinking that girls don't like you because you're a nerd.
And then it also gives more impact for when you choose to go single frame and get closer.
It'll be because you're an asshole.
So that generally is what's happening with scenes with Dave, is we're trying to remain loose until there's a point to get in tight. Another thing we do, usually typically I'm letting the dialogue lead the picture edits. If someone talks, I'll be going to them after their sentence has begun.
Is this your wife's handwriting?
It's not a handwriting.
I think so, looks like it.
Our experts thought so too. You want to play a little true or false?
I look for opportunities where it's not just cut on the line, where I can cut to someone where they're listening and then, and information is being delivered to them and then they speak, or someone that I can hold on for a series of lines. So I'm looking for those gaps so the edit doesn't become predictable.
You're talking a lot about process. And you're talking a lot about how you had the luxury of having all of this footage with like complete total coverage. And so you kind of can do essentially whatever you want. I think that then goes into what you don't do as a creative choice, the discipline of making sure that you don't go into a direction that's like probably not quite the best thing for this. What would say probably the guardrails that you probably have to keep for yourself when you are, I would say, probably even overwhelmed with this sheer amount of footage?
A lot of similarities in what the killer is doing to what I do. You just got to go the long way around. You got to understand all of the shots. You got to work out the best pieces of every one of the shots. You got to assemble something that's kind of sucks, that's a little loose, and you got to look at it and go, what sucks about this? And then you got to start refining and shaving. And as long as there's time, you can always work your way through it.